am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, who is a CPA, CGMA, and CISA, a transformational leader with a compelling background in strategy and finance and technology. Her career achievements include leadership roles at Oracle, Motorola, KPMG, and NASA. In her most recent role at Oracle, Kimberly serves as a Global Executive Director of Finance Thought Leadership. Kimberly is a former chairman of the board for the American Institute of CPAs and the Maryland Association of Certified Public Accountants. She has an undergraduate degree in Information Systems Management from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and an MBA from Loyola University. She is well known in the field and so excited to interview her today. She shares with us her journey from being in the inner city of Baltimore and the lessons she learned as a child that led to her success as a CPA in the accounting profession. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I'm really excited to be with Kimberly Ellison-Taylor today. So Kimberly, do you want to give us a little brief intro and who you are so everyone knows if they don't know you already?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy, for inviting me. So I am Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, or known as KET. I live in Maryland. I have two sons, 15 and 17. I am married to my college sweetheart. I've had the privilege and honor of being a chairman of the American Institute of CPAs. Yes. I currently work for Oracle as an executive director of finance thought leadership, and I am just really excited to be here.
Yeah, so I'm excited for you to be here too. So we met, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago and couldn't stop talking over.
Tom Hood introduced us. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah.
And then we kind of took off and he was like, okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So you have such an interesting background, and I would love to really get into your story, because what this podcast is all about is really, you know, the stories that shape us and end up leading us into the paths that we're in, and also the things we have to break along the way based on when we get our own knowledge in life. So I would love to start off if you just give me a little bit background on your childhood, your parents, how you grew up, that sort of thing.
So I grew up in the inner city of Baltimore. And I tell this story because I think it's important for breaking a belief that people who come from really humble beginnings don't have the same opportunities later in life to succeed. And so I grew up there with my mom and dad. My dad worked at Bethlehem Steel. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she was there to keep a close eye on her girls. And believe me, she did. And so we're growing up in the inner city. I lived across the street from a library. And the bulk of the time that I had free, I spent in that library. Lots of hours, lots of reading books, lots of imagining what I would do when I got big. And so I think my story is probably very similar to a lot of people. Maybe the backdrop isn't Baltimore, but they have similar aspirations and dreams that started for them when they were kids.
So was it your mom that led you to the library, or you were curious and went to the library yourself?
Well, I can tell you, so my mom was a strict, come home from school, I need to know where you are, do your homework, education levels the playing field. And so there were only a couple of places, Amy, that I really could go, and the library was one of them. And so my mom would agree that I could go to the library. And then after that, I just fell in love with books. I was so curious about the world and what the possibilities were.
And why was that? Why do you think?
Because I knew, and this is interesting too, we had one television. So let me start there. One television in our house. Back in the day where there were aluminum foil. There was aluminum foil.
Yeah.
There was no,
and everyone would stand next to the antenna to see, is this the where we won't get the white scratchy noise?
The best reception.
Yeah.
So, yes. And Amy, back when television, I tell my kids the story and they're horrified. When you could fall asleep and you could wake up and there would be static. Because the television actually literally just stopped.
Was your white noise.
It was. And so for me, I think I just wanted to know about the world, the possibilities, to have financial success when I got older. And a lot of it was around the environment that I was in. My parents did the absolute best for us that they could. They taught us a lot of core values that are so important to me and my family. And I think they're core to me being a CPA. But a lot of that, what is the world like? What can I be when I grow up? The possibilities are endless. Was shaped, I think, from my family, shaped from going to that library.
So when you say you wanted financial success, was that because of how you were growing up, or was that something that your parents were drilling into you, or why was that important to you?
That was important because my dad worked 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7. And so I'm going to tell you, if my dad was sick, I never saw him ill. He always went to work, and we didn't have a car. I didn't learn how to drive until I was 22, which is, I know, unheard of. But yes, I was old in the tooth learning how to drive because we didn't have a car. And my dad caught 2 buses. And so when I think about people, sometimes they'll say, I can't do this. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? There would be a blizzard and my dad would still figure out a way to get to work. And he added so much value that when there was no bus service, they sent a car, a truck to come and get my dad.
Oh my God.
And so I learned a lot from being in that environment. And also, Amy, quite frankly, from having that one television. Mm-hmm. And I just said, you know what, when I get big, I'm going to have a television in every room. So it started out as shallow as that I just wanted a TV in every room. And we couldn't get sweet cereal. My family probably would kill me for telling you this, but no, we had to eat cornflakes.
I was the same way. I wasn't allowed to have sugar cereal. No, I would be so jealous.
Yes, exactly. So I wanted sugar cereal, and I wanted a TV in every room. And so I just figured, when I get big, I am going to get a TV in every, and I'm going to have a car because I'm not going to be waiting on the bus in the rain.
That's so funny. I wasn't allowed to have snacks.
No snacks.
So I go to people's houses and they could have snacks, and I still feel guilty if I go and have a snack.
Exactly. So our parents must have known each other. They must have been friends. Yeah.
So when you started reading your books,
yes,
what you could be, what were some of the things that you thought you were going to be when you grew up?
Well, besides Encyclopedia Brown.
Yeah. You were going to write the encyclopedias. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. So I would say, in the 3rd grade, someone came to my elementary school. I went to William Penderhughes Elementary School, and maybe it was a career day, but they started talking about all the various disciplines. They said, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an engineer. And I listened. But finally, when they said, be a CPA, and CPAs manage the money, and that we have influence, all I could hear, I think the whole room just stopped on manage the money, because all I could think about was, I'm going to get a TV in every room. I'm going to have a car.
I'm going to have sugar cereal.
That was it. Sweet cereal. And now that I can, I don't, because I got to watch my weight. But
so, and I think that's such an important lesson, because you have to speak in the language of your audience. And if your audience are third graders that don't have any examples of CPAs and
sure.
lawyers and doctors and so forth, and you're running a career fair and you go in and start talking about debits and credits, they're not going to care. But when you're talking about managing the money, that got your attention. So I just want to kind of, because I think that's important for all of us to understand, like, you can't communicate in the same way to every audience. And if you're trying to inspire people to do things that they have you've never seen an accountant before, you've never seen a lawyer before. So how do you speak in their language so that they would want to learn about it?
That is absolutely true. And I can tell you, so when I go to career days, I have created a board, and I'm shameless with it, but we are trying to win students over to the CPA and accounting profession. And so I will put something up about Disney. I'll have McDonald's taped to the board. I've talked about athletes. I've talked about entertainers.
Right.
I said, listen, Jay-Z and Beyonce, they have CPAs, I'm sure, managing their money. I mean, I'm saying, well, LeBron James, I'm shameless with trying to bring out real life examples. So no, I don't go in and talk about reasonable assurance on financial statements and how we are working to earn the public trust, because that will come, but that's not what's going to capture their attention. Not immediately.
Well, and it reminds me of, because we've been at so many conferences together, you had told a story and it stuck with me. This is probably a long time ago. And you're like, you remember that? Where you went to a high school and you did a fashion show of how you show up to work. What's the right thing to wear?
Yes. It was actually a state. So it was interesting. It was a state society.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give them their credit. It was Wyoming State
Really?
Society.
That's awesome.
Wyoming. And so I was there, and they actually, because there are some generational differences.
Right.
When I grew up, I'm Gen X. I'll be 50, Amy, in a couple of weeks. So.
Well, you look great.
Yes, I'm trying to So what our notions of dress for success, they told us growing up, they said, dress for the position you aspire to.
Right.
This generation, they're saying, be your authentic self.
Right.
So I don't know if you could really just tell people to be their authentic selves without explaining more what that means, because it does not mean yoga pants on Casual Friday. And it doesn't mean that some of the students wear pajamas to school. So I think we have to be a little more explicit. And so in that particular example, the Wyoming CPAs had a fashion show where they actually had some of their new and young professionals doing do's and don'ts. Do this, don't do that.
I love that.
That's what we need, though.
Yes. Well, and it's real, right? Like, it's something, if you don't have the example, how do you know? You know, I remember I worked at Petite Sophisticate just so I could get the discount, so I could interview in a suit, to pay for it. So, yeah.
But you bring up a good point, Amy, when you just said, if you don't see it, how do you know?
Yeah.
And that is why I try to get out into the school systems. And I've encouraged every accountant, every CPA to help us tell our own story. Go into those environments. Our kids, our neighbors, our grandkids, our nieces, nephews, everyone's having a career day. And so we have let other people define our brand. And we've let other people define our own stereotype. I mean, I was so excited when we got the accountant, and I was planning that, we're going to have watch parties. But then Amy, someone said, well, Kimberly, he's an assassin. And I was like, I can't do that. But the point is, we don't get that sizzling role. I mean, we usually would get the role of the nerdy accountant, not recognizing that we are in so many different facets of the profession. Yeah. But our students need to see us to know that it's a possibility.
So going back to your story, so you get inspired to manage the money, And so what was your path, through high school to college to get there, like without having the example?
It's a windy road, Amy, because I clearly didn't ask the right question when I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Yeah.
I said, can I be a CPA if I come here? And they said, sure. And the answer is correct, sure. But I would have to go through econ. And so no offense to the economics
Yeah,
major.
I have trouble understanding it.
I didn't want to be an econ major. I majored, this is so amazing, on a whim in information systems management. I majored in IFSM because they said, well, you could take the classes you needed. You don't have to major in accounting to be a CPA. You just need the classes. So I said, okay, I'm going to major in information systems. And after I finished that degree, then I went to get my MBA. Then I came back and went 2 years at a community college and spent 2 years working during the day at NASA, Goddard Space Flight Center, and at night pretty much going to school until I could get
my accounting.
Yep.
Yeah, you must have been really mad at that counselor that told you that you could see the information.
Well, but you know what, Amy? It all works out. Look at how interwoven technology is today.
Yeah, no, it was perfect.
But it just took me. So by the time I actually got on the track of being a CPA, I was probably 6 to 7 years behind my colleagues who went to an accounting school, passed the exam. So they were like 24, 25, whereas I was 28, 29, basically getting on this accounting path.
And how did you feel in college? Did you feel you were in the right place? Did you feel that you were sure of the decisions and people were accepting of you in this?
Well, that is tough, Amy, because when I went to college, I had a roommate that looked differently than me. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it was a first for her. It was a first for me. I thought I was going to get there early. I must have gotten there like 7 a.m. because everyone says get there early so you can get the side of the room you want. Yeah. I get there and she is already in the bed. At the window. I didn't get there early enough. She was from Missouri, so she had come early. So there's no way I could have beat her there. But we learned a lot about each other. That experience was a good one. But I can tell you, coming from the inner city, I was determined that I was going to be successful. I was determined that I wasn't going to have the shame of going back home. Mm-hmm. My parents had told me, listen, you do your best. We'll be there to support you. If you need us, we'll figure out a way to get to you. But we know you can do it. And so I did feel confident, but I knew and expected that I was going to have to work hard. I mean, I was that student that really studied 3 hours for every 1 credit hour.
Yes.
Because that's how determined I was to make sure that I would do well. And I was on a scholarship. So I had a full scholarship. Yeah. So there is no opportunity to not do well.
Right. So what kind of mentors did you have to look up to at that time that helped guide you in this new world you were going into?
Exactly. So I've always had secret mentors. I didn't know that that's a new word today, but there were just people that I aspired to. People who were doing the very things that I thought they probably have a TV in every room that I
would. There's one criteria.
Oh my God.
They have a TV in every room. Okay.
They have a TV in every room. So that was the criteria. And it's so funny because not many people even watch TV today.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But I had a number of professors. There were a number of leaders. By then I had joined my sorority, which is Sigma Gamma Rho sorority. So there were a lot of leaders from a community service perspective. And I saw women in that group basically still doing their day job, still having their families, and still helping the community. And so with that kind of ecosystem around me, it helped me shape some of the perspectives that I have even today.
And what were some of those?
Basically, to whom much is given, much is required. I mean, I live by that. I say that all the time. I say it to my kids. I remind them that the problems that they have, other people wish they had, that we should all be grateful My dad would say this every day. Every day you wake up, it's your birthday. Now, we growing up, my sisters and I thought he just said that as an excuse not to buy us a birthday present. Because he would say every day is your birthday. But I think if you think about life that way, you wake up a little more excited, Amy, than you do otherwise. And I think that's true. And so I have maintained that you reap what you sow. And if it's one thing to be blessed, but it's better to be a blessing to others. And so that's the energy that I hope I give off, that if I was the first person you met for your day, would I help you get on the track for having a wonderful day? Or would I help you be on a track to just being miserable for the rest of the day? And I hope interactions with me are positive and they feel the energy that I feel.
Yeah. And I think having an example like that from your father, who doesn't have a car, having to take, any of us that have taken a bus to work, and work, you may or may not like, but is an exhausting day. So to get up with that attitude and share that attitude. How many sisters did you have?
2. 4 years. I'm the middle child, Amy. There's 4 years older than me and 1 4 years younger.
Yeah. So, to have that attitude and share that is, so important. So, so you started out at NASA.
Yes.
And then, where'd you go from there? How did your career start moving along, and what type of work were you doing?
So this is the aha moment for me early.
Okay.
So I'm working at NASA. I'm loving it. I think it's the best place in the whole world.
And what were you doing there?
So I was a computer specialist. I helped manage the mainframe data center for administrative and financial workload. So pretty exciting. Yeah. Nothing as jazzy as putting people on the moon, but I help people get paid. So hey, there you have it.
Yeah.
I managed the help desk and also did some work around integrated financial management projects, which was really cool. But I think that my aha moment was that people were thinking, hey, Kimberly, you should come and work here. And that was Motorola. And I was like, man, I love it. This is my good government job. When you grow up in some environments, your family, they would say you stay in one job for 100 years. Right. My aha moment was that, hey, maybe I really can go somewhere else and work. And my parents, I can tell you, were appalled, but I did leave NASA to go and work at Motorola, and it was a great experience. But at Motorola, my aha moment was I failed the CPA exam. Yeah. And so when I failed the exam, so meanwhile, I'm going to school at night. And so by the time it was time for me to take the exam, I had not studied at all. I bought the books. I didn't think I needed a review course. I'm textbook for why you need to do a review course. I clearly, Amy, I thought that I could just do it on my own. There was not even a crease in my book, Amy. I'm ashamed to say I needed this.
That's amazing. I studied, but I still didn't pass my first time. So,
well, okay, well, that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
And so I needed to leave Motorola. So I left Motorola and went to KPMG. And so I was in an environment where you're looking around and everyone's so excited. Back in the days where the dinosaurs roamed the earth, we took the exam twice a year, remember?
I know.
Yeah. And everyone
I remember, because you could never get done. Yeah.
But everyone knew if you passed the exam or not. Because back then, before all the privacy rules, they posted your name on the website if you passed the exam. And so everyone would know if you passed it or not. And I was just like, I failed it. It was terrible. I'm never doing this again. I failed it in February. I passed it in November of the same year. I had a wake up moment. It was like, I need to study. Maybe all those old people who said what you have to pass it, maybe they're not wrong. Maybe I need to focus. Maybe I need to stop doing so much of this other stuff. And I did. And so I passed the exam. And so those were great moments for me of realizing that you learn a lot more from failure sometimes than you do success.
No, it's true. And limiting your focus, right? Like what you're saying, like you had to cut things out in order to achieve the goal that you wanted to achieve.
Sure.
So you've had an incredible CPA career. So from KPMG, Is that when you started working with the Maryland CPA Society, or?
Right, well, I was at KPMG when I started working with.
Yeah.
My kids think I work for
Exactly.
AICPA.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't work for AICPA. I work for Oracle. And they were like, really? So no, I started working with the Maryland Association of CPAs and Tom Hood, and it's been absolutely amazing. So I answered the call to volunteer, and I am so glad I did. That was definitely.
And why did you volunteer? Like, when you say you answered the call, like, what does that mean to you?
Because they sent out an email to say, congratulations on passing the exam, you're a student, you're in the pipeline, and then congratulations for passing the exam. And so I was excited, one, that they knew who I was. Like,
yes.
Who I am? And they're invited. Now, little did I know then that letter went out to everybody.
Yeah.
It was just going to me. It was like, oh my gosh, they know who I am. They want me.
Yeah.
And so I felt like Amy, the time that I studied was blood, sweat, and tears on that exam. And I said, I am going to make it worth it. Every single day, I'm going to make it worth it. And it's been such a huge return on that investment over and over and over again. And that's what I tell my sons when I'm trying to talk with them about the importance of how critical speaking the language of business is, that this is only a blip in time compared to the return on investment that you get from being so recognized as a CPA.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it comes back to outreach again, right? Because we talked about that with school, and then Maryland CPA said the right words to you to make you feel accepted. And I know another story of the same thing that got you involved in a whole nother way with the AICPA, and that's with Rich Caterano. So, and that was a definite outreach moment to change the paradigm of the makeup of how you got involved with the AICPA. So I'd love for you to kind of share that story. And that's really where KET came about, right? Around that time?
No, I've pretty much, since I've been married, people thought Kimberly Ellison-Taylor was so long.
Yeah.
What they did. And so I was chairman of Maryland, as you know. And then when I worked on Horizons 2025 with Paul Stallin, and Paul Stallin, as the chairman, actually was the one, maybe he was the past chairman because he was in charge of nominations. He called me and said, hey, KT, he probably didn't say KT, he probably said Kimberly, but KT, would you be interested in serving further in AICPA? And so between an application process and probably a lot of people speaking out on my behalf, I made it to the board of directors. And so that was an incredible experience. And meanwhile, on the board, I got to meet so many amazing people, colleagues that I call friends and hopefully will be in touch with forever. But one of those was Rich Caterano and Tommy Berry. I mean, Tommy was just, I just can't even say enough about Tommy. But in this case, Rich Caterano's theme was diversity and inclusion.
He was the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and it was all white men.
Well, he was the chairman of AICPA, Amy, and chose as his theme, which is even higher, diversity and inclusion. Now, when you're the chairman of AICPA, you have all of the usual dashboard issues, small practitioner, you want to help public interest, all of that. And you get to do something that is personal and real to you. Rich could have chosen anything. Anything. Something so much easier, something a little more concrete, something that you could really get your arms around that wouldn't make people uncomfortable. And he chose diversity and inclusion. And I am sure he and I talk about this all the time because right now, fast forward, Rich is the chairman of the National Commission of Diversity and Inclusion, and I get to work with him as his vice chair.
Oh, and cool.
So, isn't that cool? So Rich was the 100th chairman of AICPA, and I was the 104th chairman. And so Bill Baloff was the head of nominations, and I remember him teasing Rich and saying, it was great of me, Rich, to help you out there with your platform, to see the fruition of it. And so I just love that kind of teasing. But I also think it is important that
Yeah.
sometimes we do step out of our comfort zones and we do things that are uncomfortable. We become allies, we become champions. And that's what Rich did. I mean, Rich ended up walking into meetings with his peers and having probably very candid, courageous conversations about diversity on every level that you can imagine and what inclusion feels like and what the end state was. And I am so aware that there are so many other individuals that are diverse that could have been the chairman. And I'm just grateful that it was me because
Well,
it could have been any number of people.
from hearing him talk, you know, one of the things he said was you can't wait for them to apply, because if they don't see me, they don't see me in us.
That's true.
You're not going to apply, right? So they did outreach to try to find targets that were, to really change the diversity makeup of the committee, of the AICPA leadership. And, I just think, again, it's not like he had the background to know to do that. But it's so important when we think about changing the paradigm, whether it's women, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's religion, whatever it is, that that we're actively going after it versus passively waiting. Yes.
And that's absolutely true, because sometimes we just don't have visibility to the talent inside our organizations. And I think that I'm going to assume positive intent. And I am just going to think that the CEOs and the hiring leaders don't always know what talent they have. And I would encourage them to take a look. I mean, I know we can source talent from outside the organization and from a number of different places. By no means are we asking people to lower standards for quality and lower their standards for excellence. But I just happen to believe, and maybe I'm biased, that you could find talented, diverse team members who could join your organization and help you move the ball forward. And at the same time, convey that you are living your mission, purpose, and values. A lot of organizations talk about inclusive leadership, but if you look at their core right-hand woman, right-hand man, their board of directors, their closest executives, that's not really reflected. And I just got to think that we didn't look as hard as we could have to find that kind of talent and bring it in, because it's a voice and a perspective that's missing from their decision making that I think will serve them in good stead if they were able to capture.
Yeah. So I'm watching this. My son and I found this show on Netflix, it's funny, but you actually learn. It's called 100 Humans, but they do these experiments on 100 people that come from all different backgrounds, and they did a show on unconscious bias where they had them in the beginning saying, who thinks they have any, bigotry or, any kind of, bias toward anything else. And, only 6 out of the 100 said they thought they had it. And by the end of the show, with all the experiments, people don't even realize when they're doing it or think about the questions you need to ask before you make an assumption about people, and so forth. And then also the work that it takes to go that extra mile that you got in 3rd grade. But if you hadn't had the example or someone even telling you there was something called a CPA, how would you know? And these things are so important, planting these seeds, because look at the impact you've had on the profession because of it.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, one of the things that is so heartwarming to me would be the emails, the posts, the letters that I've gotten from people all over the world saying, I never thought I'd see the day that there was a Black chairman at AICPA.
Woman,
And that is
Black chairman
enough.
woman.
Yes, and a woman at that, right? So imagine me
Yeah.
reading this email, or me, and I guess in this post environment that we're in, I'm gonna have to rethink my hugging strategy. But
I
I
know,
hug
right? I
people from
know.
all over because they wanted to hug me. I'm a hugger, so I
Yeah.
hug
I
them,
was just
and
talking about this the other day. I'm like, what do you do? Yeah.
I know, because I am
Yeah.
completely a hugger, but I'll have to rethink what I do. Maybe I rub
Yeah.
elbows or something.
Yeah.
But if I have had any impact in changing someone's perspective or broadening what's possible, then I am excited by that.
Yeah. So, I want to, as and I'll ask you kind of our last question in a second, but when you think about, this course of your life,
Mhm.
what do you think you had to overcome, like in your own belief systems, to be able, I mean, beyond like the TV thing?
I just want to tell
but
this,
it
this
but it
really
got you
quick
here. Like that's
story.
really important. Sugar
I
cereal and
did.
TV. But like,
Yes.
what do you think that you had to break in your own thought pattern in order to achieve what you've achieved?
I think for me, I think maybe it's around the studying, because
Mhm.
remember when I graduated valedictorian. I don't know if I said that, but I did. I graduated
Yeah.
valedictorian. I went to school on a full scholarship. So I'm used to studying my
Yeah.
way, learning my way forward inside the organizations. And I think along the way, I learned that it's so much more about relationships, and
Yeah.
it's about people. And
Hmm.
so, yes, you still need the technical skill sets, no question, but you also need to have relationship skill sets. And so I use that every single day. I'm always trying to build a bridge, even with my kids. I mean, I'm the female in the house right now because I'm here with 15-year-old, 17-year-old, my husband. And
Yeah.
so I'm constantly, and I do it without even thinking about it. So that's probably why I feel so included. I don't feel out of place anywhere. And it's always because my automatic reflex is to build a bridge. I'm meeting
Hmm.
you in the middle. I'm looking for commonality. I'm looking for things that we can discuss. We have kids in common. We went to the same school. We're CPAs. We like the color green. Whatever it is, I am constantly looking for the bridge to build, to bring us closer together, because I think there are more things that we might have in common than the things are that separate us. And I think when people realize that, then suddenly they forget I'm Black and they are Caucasian. They just think we're two people having a discussion about a topic, and we don't have to think about those surface things that might cause unconscious bias.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, we could talk forever, but I know we got to wrap up the interview. So I like to answer just or ask you just some quick fire
Sure.
questions to close it up. So
Okay.
you get to
Oh,
pick a category.
okay. Here
So
we go.
your category is either family, friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Spiritual.
Okay.
Okay.
Things or actions I don't have that I want as far as spirituality.
Peace. Constant peace. Internal peace.
Internal peace. Things or actions that I do have that I want.
Hope.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's what's gotten you through, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah. Things or actions I don't have that I don't want.
Negative thoughts. Cynicism.
And things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
Disappointment in people sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. You're quick. That was like a game show. Like you could have hit the Family Feud button right then
Oh
with these,
my
but
God.
like 10 points.
Okay, good. I'll
Awesome.
take it. I'll take it.
Sugar cookies for you.
Yes. Ginger snaps.
Ginger snap. Okay, got
Ginger
it.
snaps are the
Yeah.
best ever.
Yeah. So, as we're wrapping up here, is there any big takeaway that you want people to have that they walk away from this interview with? I mean, you've given a lot of lessons, but is there a kind of an overriding message that you want to make sure people want to walk away with?
And I would say, Amy, that improbable does not mean impossible. And I have given a couple of presentations about that when I'm asked to talk about inclusive leadership. Because if someone had given you my background on paper, you didn't know who I was, you didn't know what I looked like, but you knew I came from the inner city, just the social economic status alone would give you pause.
Right.
And then when you said she's Black and she's growing up in a school system that may not be, may not have all the resources that we would like, and she's in an environment where people are not walking around her that are usually college grads, except for her teachers at school, would you think that she would one day end up to be the chairman of such an amazing organization like AICPA and Maryland Association of CPAs? And I would probably say, even I'd have to admit it myself, that the answer is probably no. I wouldn't think that that would be probable.
Right.
But just because it's improbable doesn't mean it's impossible.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having this interview with me today. And I know there's going to be so many takeaways for people to take into their life as well.
Well, thank you so much, and all that you're doing, especially because we need wellness and mindfulness, and you are the leading expert on that. So thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time to take those mindful moments and reflect on this conversation that we just had with Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, which she just has such a fascinating journey, and there's so much there from the multiple conversations I've had with her. But really, with her beginnings being in the inner city of Baltimore and not having an example of the kind of profession she is in today, she just fascinates me with how she got there. And love, the examples of just the little things in life that we aspire to have, like having a TV in every room or having sugar in the house. Those things that she believed that having financial success would give her that TV in every room. And we talked about it during this interview of how important it is that outreach happens with everyone inclusively in the world, because not everyone has the examples of different careers in their families. And so a lot of times we go toward what we know rather than taking an uncomfortable path of something we don't know. And so having someone come into her school in third grade was such an important thing, but speaking in a language that she could understand, which was about managing money. And because this financial success theme was so important to her, that really started shifting her path along the way. And I think that's important for us to think about when we're speaking to audiences, clients, people that don't necessarily have the same expertise that we have. A lot of times we speak over people's heads, or we use terminology or acronyms that people don't know and therefore can't relate to what we have to say. And so if we need to get a message across, it's important that we understand who our audience is and what's important to them, not just us, in order to influence their decisions or have them be able to change their perspective maybe from what they thought before. And we all get stuck in our belief systems because that's all we know. So being able to communicate in a way that people understand is so important. And so when we talk about her journey, and she talked about having secret mentors, which it's funny because it's something that I've always done as well, that we don't always have to define mentorship as something official and someone that we meet with, and it has to have certain parameters around it. We can go seek out the people we aspire to, or the people that give us inspiration that helps us to understand what was their journey, or what are the things that they're doing that we want to model to make our own, because we find that it's so important in our own lives as well. And she talked about her aha moment in her career journey about not being focused enough to achieve the goal that she wanted, was to pass the CPA exam, and wanting to take on everything because you're excited about doing that. And when we do that, sometimes we stretch ourselves so thin that we don't actually accomplish the thing we want to accomplish the most. So it's important when we're prioritizing or thinking about what we want in our lives that we prioritize the right things and not try to take on everything, because it's hard for us to be a master of everything in order for us to achieve what we really desire. And that takes some time to step back. We also had a long discussion in this interview about reaching out to people and bringing them into the fold with us of where we want to create inclusion. Because a lot of times, if we don't make the outreach, it just doesn't happen. Because if I don't see myself in your organization or with friends that you have, I'm going to assume that I don't fit in there. And so it's up to us to have those open arms and to be reaching out to people that we want to bring into the fold that may be different, and it is uncomfortable, but learning how to communicate, just like in her 3rd grade class, in a way that shows that they are included, that you do want them, and that their goals might be different than your own. So how do you make sure that you're creating the career and the pathway for people that's important to them? And so we have to ask those questions. I think one of the big takeaways that Kimberly had said in her life that she had to break was that we sometimes have our heads down and we're not thinking about relationships and understanding what other people need and what makes them tick. And so if we want to build a bridge, it's important that we're thinking about others, not just our own needs, and how we bring that together so we can meet in the middle, as she talked about, to decide what we have in common, what we can share, so that people do feel included in the process. So I think if we have something to take away from this, really understanding our communication, our language, even our own unintentional biases is really important, because what we can actually create is some of the most important leaders in anything that we do when we open ourselves up for something different. And so maybe think about today, even in your own life, where can you make yourself uncomfortable? That you're going to grow and learn from the process because you did something that was maybe outside of your wheelhouse, outside of what you know, and outside of your belief system. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.